Welcome back. Now, 2022 has been quite a busy year politically. The governing party held its national conference, which saw President Cyril Ramaphosa retaining his position. But before that, some ANC MPs, including Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, Supra Mahumapelo and Mervyn Dirks, voted with the opposition parties against the governing party line to adopt the report on the Phala farm robbery scandal. Now, in the local government sphere, the ANC also lost Nelson Mandela Bay to the DA-led coalition. Its attempts to regain the city of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni also failed. Now, to discuss this, we're joined by political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa this morning. Lukhanyo, very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I suppose a lot of questions being raised post-Nasrec. We know that part 2 of it is still to be expected come, the 5th of Jan this month. The January 8th statement also expected this Sunday. But when it comes to the repercussions of those MPs that voted against the party line last year, what do you think can be expected? Because I heard a bit of, murmur around a possible cabinet reshuffle. But from your perspective, what do you think is to be expected?
Good morning, Tumelo, and thank you for inviting me. Compliments of the new season to you and the viewers. I think from the ANC's perspective, it's going to be difficult to discipline some of the members who voted with their conscience, because there is a constitutional court ruling that sort of protects MPs when they vote with their conscience, even if they vote against their own political party. So for those reasons, I think it will be difficult for the ANC to take action against them on those bases if they are well advised in terms of the legal standing of that judgment. But I do think there could be political ways in which they can manage that situation. So some of those people can be removed in the form of a cabinet reshuffle, where the president doesn't have to give reasons why he's removing them. So he doesn't have to cite the fact that they actually voted against him. And those are for the people that are actually serving in his cabinet. So that would be NDZ, that would be Lindiwe Sisulu, that could be affected by that. The ANC could also make a decision to recall some of these people that they've deployed to parliament and don't have to give reasons why they're recalling them. And if they do that, then I think they could also just fall within the category or that protection of the Concord ruling. So, but if the ANC wants to take steps against them, specifically for voting with their conscience and voting to adopt the Phala report, then the ANC will have a problem in that regard. So yes, I also think that there would be a cabinet reshuffle. There are too many cabinet vacancies that are there, and I think that cabinet reshuffle should happen after the January 8th statement, but I'm sure it might happen before SONA. But it depends on how quickly the president decides to act, because cabinet does operate with a few vacancies. And going into the new year, it would be good that we have a fully functional cabinet, that it's full complement of cabinet ministers.
Yeah, I'm sure you would remember post the vote in the National Assembly, the likes of Ronald Lamola as well as Gwede Mantashe being, questioned, interviewed. And I remember Gwede Mantashe saying those who voted against the party lines will have to face a disciplinary committee. The NEC would have to obviously decide on it. Ronald Lamola is saying the ANC clearly showing that, it doesn't really necessarily hold a gun to anyone's head, if I may directly quote him. Everyone is free to vote as democratically and as openly as they wish to, but still saying that they would still have to face, of course, that particular disciplinary committee. You mentioned Lindiwe Sisulu, you mentioned Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, both long-standing serving members of the ANC as well as in a cabinet. What was the process that the NEC would need to follow now to address particularly that issue of discipline?
Well, the NEC already had made a resolution to refer this to the National Disciplinary Committee, but that was the previous NEC that exited. And I think they also made a decision to refer it to National Conference, like they always do, and defer issues to other structures of the ANC. It was not a really great NEC, the one that's just been voted out. So I think this NEC will also have to grapple with that question again, whether or not to continue with that decision. But should the NEC now decide to go ahead and discipline these members, I can say they will have a problem, because there is a constitutional court judgment that protects MPs when they vote with their conscience. If the ANC were to take steps against MPs who voted with their conscience, then they would be in violation of that court decision. And any member who would take that on review, whether it's Lindiwe Sisulu or NDZ, I think they would be successful in the courts because there is a decision by the highest court in the land that protects them.
We're also expecting, Lukhanyo, come, the 7th of this month, this Sunday, the January 8th statement. What do you think would be of priority for, newly elected ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa? This, of course, as he gives a political overview for the year that will be for the ANC in 2023.
I don't think there are any policies that we saw coming out of Nasrec that would, require prioritization from the January 8th statement. It's much of the same that the president will speak about. So you will hear the same promises, we'll hear repetition of the same words. You will hear an uninspired ragamuffin, of much of the same. And it will just be presented in new language probably, but it's going to be much of the same. You'll still talk about a president that is going to speak in platitudes about land redistribution in the country. You'll hear a president that still bemoans the fact that we have the highest unemployment rates in the world, that we have the highest inequality in the world, but we don't seem to have any solutions or ideas as to how those matters could be resolved. And that's what we'll see from this January 8th statement. It will, however, be what it's always been, or what it's now become, razzmatazz, as Balula calls it. It will be a humdinger. They will have a lot of fun. They will have a lot of members that are there. But in terms of the politics, the substance of it all, it will be much of the same. It will just be empty and vacuous.
Coalitions as well. Just before I let you go, Lukhanyo, just let's get your perspective on this. The ANC obviously losing out to the DA when it comes to the Nelson Mandela Bay. We saw them trying to also regain Ekurhuleni. They lost Ekurhuleni as well as the city of Johannesburg. I think Dada Morero also saying that they're not done fighting to get back the city yet. What do you think is to be expected as far as coalitions is concerned, or at least the DA still gripping and hanging on to power in metros such as the city of Johannesburg?
So interesting dynamics at local government level in terms of coalitions. So you have the ANC versus EFF sort of dynamic, but you also have the DA versus Action SA sort of dynamic, and how that is also causing instability within the local government. So the ANC and the EFF attempted to work together in Gauteng, but that didn't seem to pan out as they eventually lost attempts to grab Ekurhuleni for the EFF and attempts to grab city of Johannesburg for the ANC. However, there's that dynamic of Action SA and the DA who are competing for the same constituency and who both have their eye in 2024 and want to solidify their bases, but they're eating from the same pot in terms of voter support, and therefore there's a lot of poaching of each other's supporters and each other's members from the DA and Action SA. As a result of that, that becomes a new dynamic that we'll look into for 2023, how that relationship develops, because should it deteriorate any further, then you can really see instability just become a central feature of local government, the local government space. So that those become interesting. And also remember that in the city of Johannesburg, Dr. Mpho is hanging by a thread. She definitely doesn't have numbers to hold a position there. She's only been hanging on from legal technicalities and procedural technicalities that she's been successful at raising and defending that position. But in terms of numbers at council, she doesn't have the numbers. So it will be interesting to see if she'll be able to make it throughout 2023. And I think if they have a relationship that improves between the DA and Action SA, then maybe they could be able to do that. But Action SA seems to be warming up more to the EFF than to the other political parties. So another dynamic is the Action SA banding together with the EFF to create some sort of power block that is able to become a radar that directs which side coalition governments go in local government elections, especially in Gauteng.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Lukhanyo, going to be quite an interesting political year ahead, especially in the likes of City of Johannesburg, where the issue around stability have also come up due to these political puzzles being moved around. But thank you so much for talking to me. Lukhanyo Vangqa, our political analyst this morning, of course, giving us just his perspective on what is to be expected in as far as the ANC is concerned with that January 8th statement coming up this weekend, coalitions in the likes of the City of Johannesburg, but also seeing, the likes of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Supra Mahumapelo, Mervyn Dix, Lindiwe Sisulu, and what, of course, their future holds, particularly when it comes to their political career and also for those serving in cabinet.